But let's get into the college football playoff expansion starting in 2026. It has now been voted on that the college football playoff format will expand from 4 teams to 12 teams, and a lot going on here. That can change as soon as 2024, that we could go to this format. A lot of what we've seen in terms of the nuts and bolts and how teams will be selected and how they will be ranked. They will still be ranked by the College Football Playoff Committee, but the 4 highest ranked conference champions will receive a first round bye. Teams seeded 5 through 12 will play each other on either the second or third week of December. So, Drew, a lot going on here, but I want to get your takeaways just, on the teams on the outside looking in. This is, I think, the main complaint about the college football playoff era. It's been a lot of the same, a lot of redundancy. We've seen Alabama, Georgia, sometimes 2 representatives from the SEC or one conference, Ohio State, Clemson, a lot of those same teams. Now you open it up to 12, and not for parity's sake, but technically there's going to be more opportunities for teams who have been on the outside of the bubble.
And I think that's what everyone wants, right? I mean, yeah, sure. If you're in Alabama, you're a Georgia fan, some of those other programs, you don't want this. You don't want it to expand, but everyone else does. I mean, if you're a fan of a team that's traditionally kind of a fringe top 25 program, now early on in the season, you're crossing your fingers and holding out hope that you can make the postseason. And look what March Madness has done. I don't think it's going to be the same as that, but we're allowing more teams to be a part of the party. So I love that aspect. I'm interested to see how the lines get drawn out with conference realignment. I mean, as a group of 5 program, and hashtag I'm a group of 5 guy, I went to Florida Atlantic. We'll see if they ever have a chance at this thing, but this is a move that they want to make. I'm sure it's money and TV deal driven, but I'm here for it. I like it. Let's just see, what the fine print says when it comes time to actually select these teams.
They say it's not money motivated, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on that sentiment. The one thing for me that I will say that I do think is going to be a positive, and Josh Pate is somebody that is not a proponent of college football expansion, and I agree with him, but I do think there are some positives. And to me, you look at the schools that finished 5 through 12 last year: Notre Dame, Ohio State, Baylor, Ole Miss, Oklahoma State, Michigan State, Utah, Pittsburgh. I mean, some of those programs aren't the typical ones that you see at the grown-ups table, and they are on the outside looking in. If I'm a fan of one of those programs, to me, that just applies pressure on a national stage. You're going to see a lot of these cross-conference matchups, and you're going to know what your program needs to do and invest in from a personnel and from a resource standpoint. And you're going to get a barometer year in and year out for what it takes to compete at a national level. That's what I think the positive side of this is. I think the negative side of this is you look at it and you say, hey, what about the relevance week in and week out? Some of these conference games. What about what about LSU and Florida State? Now, if LSU runs the table, that game doesn't hold the same weight. So I think on both sides, there's arguments for it and against it. But Drew, you start to look at this and you're like, hey, this is kind of becoming a little bit more and more like the NFL model. Now we're going to have 12 teams. The NFL is at 14 teams. I know you got a take on that.
I do, but real quick, on the regular season games not mattering, I'm going to push back here with this. Go to a bar on a Sunday. Everyone is watching any NFL game regardless. Watch Thursday night football, Monday night, people tune in. You just got to have a product that people want to watch. So that's my counter to the regular season games not mattering. But no, with this expanded playoff, I think we're getting closer and closer to an NFL model when it comes to college football. And we're already seeing it right now. Look, high school recruiting, that's your draft. The transfer portal, that's your free agency. But I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually got 2 mega conferences, right? Let's take the Big Ten, that can be the NFC, the SEC, that can be the AFC, right? And then you kind of have an NFL-style playoffs with a wild card division, with some first-round buys. And maybe it's only 48 teams, 24 and 24 in each one of those conferences, but I think that's not that far away. And if that were to happen, then let everyone else, the other 60 schools, 65 schools, let them have have their own playoff. Make that a different type of division. And maybe it's a feeder system where guys go up and they come back down. But I do think, to me, that's was my initial thought when news broke on Friday that this thing expanded. Hey, we're getting a lot closer to a true NFL model with college football, and we'll see what happens. We keep talking about NIL and all this stuff and all these deals. What happens if there's a collective bargaining agreement at some point down the line? So I think that's something to keep an eye on with the expanded playoff.